On the next episode of Painting and Travel, Sarah visits the wood-fired kiln of potter David Vorhees in the foothills of North Carolina as Roger uses acrylics to paint the scene leading to the Pottery studio.
Roger and I are visiting the foothills of North Carolina, and we're going to see the studio of David Vorhees. He has a beautiful place here with his wife, Molly Sharp, who's a wonderful jeweler. Today we'll visit David's studio where he does his pottery.
Years ago, I had my own pottery studio and used to throw lots of pottery with little faces on it. But today I'm going to do a painting of David's studio and all these trees in the background. I blocked this in with the side of a piece of charcoal to get these big, broad areas. Here's his studio, this dark area up here where the little hill goes over. And I have this nice S-curve going around and leading the eye right to the studio. Here we have a grassy area that's catching a lot of sunlight. Now I'm going to make a few more adjustments to this sketch. And while I'm doing that, let's join Sarah and David back up at his pottery workshop.
David, it's a beautiful fall day. It's nice to be in the studio again. I'm wondering, what stage of the pottery making are you in?
The last couple of days have been the final preparation. We bisque fire everything on electric kilns, and then it's time to glaze them. So we're doing all the glazing and decorating.
So today you load the kiln, and does that just take a few minutes, or how long does that take?
No, we have over 200 pots to fit into the kiln, so it's a jigsaw puzzle. So we'll start at the bottom, and I have a car kiln, so we're able to walk around it very easily. So we can load it from several different sides, and we work our way up by building layers.
Now, after they're in the kiln, how do you cook them?
Well, we have to take the whole, it's a car kiln, so we have to roll the bed and the door in, and I use a boat winch to do that.
So you have a couple thousand pounds, I guess, at that point that you're trying to...
Yeah, it weighs close to a ton by the time we're rolling it in.
What does the salt glaze look like when it's completed, when you pull it out?
Salt glazing was originated by the Germans. This is a piece that came out of the firing a couple firings ago, and
nice shape.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
I want to hold
this undulations in the side of it because of the atmosphere that goes in the kiln. I want to make it respond to the fire.
This is a nice design. It's got a good handle on it. I can see it's going to pour well, and it's very attractive. How do you make this shape? Is this done when it's after you get it off the wheel?
Yeah, I let it stiffen up a little bit so I get it to a soft leather state, and then I take the edge of a wooden ruler and I start pressing it in, and as the clay's getting more and more stiff, I'll go back and do it several times.
You've got an extra pair of hands here. Can I help you take something out
to
the oven?
I'll tell you what, I'll let you take the platter out, but I'm going to hold it by the board underneath it, okay?
All right, we'll make a trip out there.
All right.
David constructed his wood-burning kiln by recycling the bricks from a previous use. It's tremendously labor-intensive to operate a wood-fired kiln, so David and a couple other potters get together to do all the work necessary to fire it up about 4 times a year. Otherwise, he relies on a gas kiln. Last look at the carefully placed pots on the cart shelves while they are slowly pulled into position in this large kiln, gradually heated with oak to reach the desired temperature that must be monitored all day and all night. so David sleeps in a chair by the kiln and he can add wood as needed. By removing one brick, you can look inside the kiln and check the clay temperature cones.
Well, I've made a few minor adjustments here and I think I'm ready to start. I have my acrylics out today: titanium white, alizarin crimson, Indian yellow, ultramarine blue, and I have this opaque color, very opaque. It's called chromium oxide green. I've got an atomizer so I can keep my paints wet. I put these on just a few minutes ago, so they're starting to skin over already, so I'm eager to get started. These three colors here, the alizarin crimson, Indian yellow, and ultramarine blue, these are all transparent colors, so these are going to give me some nice dark colors. I mix all three of those together just to make a dark tone. I'm going to start with my darks first. And as you can see, I've covered this board with a thin wash of burnt sienna. I did that back in my studio. And that way I won't have to deal with all the white on the board. It just gives me a little base coat to start with. I'm not mixing a lot of my colors on the palette here. I'm picking up this red, yellow, and blue, not mixing it very much. And then as I put it back here, I get some of these autumn-looking colors from all these falling leaves. So I'm careful not to mix too much there on my palette. I'm just going to mix it right here on my painting. I'm going to continue to pick up these three colors. We have some real darks right in here. Well, I've got my dark areas all placed in here. I have my middle tones already because this board is covered with this middle tone burnt sienna. But I'm going to add some more middle tones here, and then I'll put in some light areas. I think the edge of the studio, that's somewhat lighter. So this is sort of a grayish color right here. Now, since I'm looking up at this, the horizon line is actually down here. I can't see the horizon because it's over that little hill there. I'm going to put some of this roof in, which is going to ultimately be hidden by some more foliage, but we'll put in enough of that here. And I'm going to make it brighter than I see it because I do want the eye to get over into that area. Then we have some more dark passages right up in here. This is where the wood-fired kiln is. Okay, that's very dark and cool right under there. Some more yellow in with that. Make a dark green. And we'll just tap in some foliage of this evergreen tree. Now I'll put some negative areas in this tree in a while, and that's always the really fun part of a painting, is to work on these negative areas. But I have some more trees here. I'll spray my board. That way this paint will flow easily over the surface of the board. We'll drag in a couple more tree trunks here. And we've got a lot of foliage coming up in here. I'm making this very dark right now, and we'll lighten that up later. But I want to start with my dark tones first. I don't always start with the dark tones first, but generally I do. For me, it works better. There's always a danger of getting the painting looking too chalky if I add too much white to things to begin with. And that's why I like to start with the darks. Right in back of his house, we have some more of the trees. And you can see this burnt sienna right in here is coming right through this area, and some of that burnt sienna just shines through these transparent colors I'm putting on now. Now in a little while we'll dip into the white, we'll get that blue sky, and we'll do these negative areas back in here. A lot of leaves have fallen on the ground, so we have a lot of this burnt sienna color showing through. I've picked up a fan brush here. I'm going to take this color with my three primary colors here and start to form this road coming down here. We have right in the center of the road, the grass grows up, and then where the tire tracks are, there's not so much grass. So a fan brush will give me some nice rough looking brush work, and it will still let this burnt sienna shine through from underneath. Now I've also moved this road over this way some more to give it more of an S-curve. Actually, this road tucks up closer to the house, but I'm changing it here on my composition. Here I'm using strokes that sort of follow the contour of the land. See how the land, it comes up here. David's studio is up on a bit of a hill. So I'll just follow that contour down with my brush as I go. And over this side, it goes up. Now here we have a nice field which is flat. It's about the only flat area in this whole piece of property. And they do raise a few vegetables on it. So I will take my Indian yellow, this transparent Indian yellow, and with some horizontal brush strokes, I'll make that look like it's a small field. Now this is just the base coat right now. This is just sort of the foundation of the painting. I can still see vaguely some of these fence posts in here and so on. So I haven't lost them totally. I can still see them just a little. And we have these leaves covering the road. This path up here isn't used very much, so it's not very cleared off. So the leaves do tend to stay on this small path. This gives me a nice warm foundation. I want this painting to be very warm. Down here it gets darker. I'm going to put a little more of this grass in here. There. It's really important for me to cover the entire canvas before I go back and start adjusting everything else. So at this point I have almost the entire canvas covered. So now I definitely have my darks in there, and I have most of my middle tones. Now I have to start working on putting some of the lights in. Now as I look at this, I always squint my eyes because I can see the contrast of things much better when I squint my eyes, and it simplifies everything. So some of my brightest areas are going to be a few patches right in here where the doors and windows are. I can see already that this is too light. I'm going to have to darken this. But next to those patches of very light values, the lightest part of this is the sky. So I'm going to mix up some ultramarine blue and white. It's a very, very vivid blue sky today. Now already I can deal with a few of the negative areas. I can refine these as I go, but I don't want to refine anything very much right now because a painting is all about making changes all the time. So I don't want to spend too much time doing any one thing that I think is right, because it may not end up being right when I make changes to another area, because one area of the painting affects the other area of a painting. So I like to finish the painting, if I can, kind of all at the same time. So that's why I'm always jumping around from area to area of the painting. Here it gets very dense with the trees, but I do want to show some of the sky coming through these areas. I'm going to continue on with these light areas, and as I squint my eyes and look up here, this is a nice light area, and I have some nice patches of brilliant green grass. So right up here, this is warm where these dead leaves are. We'll start to lighten that up, and at this point I start to use some white. Until now, none of this area at all used white, except right in here. All this was done with transparent colors. This is a nice area to have some light tones because it leads my eye up to where I want it to go. Just using the side of my brush to scumble some of these in here. This is where the fence goes. I've almost lost the fence now, but I know where that's going to be placed, right in here. I can see just a touch of my fence sketch there. Not worried about losing it. So right up here, there's just a hint of sunlight coming through the trees. And that's nice because I don't want this all a real solid dark area. I don't want it just to be a black hole up there. So a little light here and there is a nice feature to have. Right up in here. Some of this light too will also help to define these big tree trunks. We'll do that later on. We had some lighter areas right here. This defines the edge of the building where the wood-fired kiln is. I'll continue with these light colors. This has some white in it now, so this is opaque. I see some of these leaves coming in here. I just want to continue to lighten this. I don't want to lighten it too much. I'm sort of cautious when it comes to lightening things up. I want to maintain some really nice bright highlights somewhere where I want my eye to go. This may be a good time to use the fan brush again, so I'll pick up this yellow and white, touch of red. So we'll dab a few more of these fallen leaves right in here. They kind of go up the hill. I'll just put a few here and there. If I spray this with my atomizer, then I dab this with the brush, these will soften out. They won't be quite so hard. Now a small brush, I'm going to make this lighter because I really like the way this turns up here. So right where this turns, I'm not seeing this quite the way I'm painting it. I'm really exaggerating this area of the turn. I think it's just a nice feature right up here. It's very muted what I'm looking at, but I'm going to emphasize it here in my painting. Well, I can see that this is too light here. The building is too light, so I'm going to darken this. And one nice thing about the acrylics is they dry so fast that I can put a glaze over this now, because everything here is totally dry. Everything on the board here is dry, and we've really only been here a few minutes. We have this brilliant green grass here in this field, so I'm taking my chromium oxide green and Indian yellow. Boy, it makes a beautiful green, you know. Just put a thin coat over this dry coat of paint here, because I still want these strokes here to continue to show through. That is a beautiful green, and that green comes over and then goes up the hill, because that's where some strong sunlight is hitting right now. It's hitting down on this field and back up on this hill. If I put in too much white, I'm going to lose all this underpainting in here, but I do need to get it brighter and lighter, so I did put some white in that. Just carefully bringing this from these low dark values into the higher values. Now I'll put a few more touches of this brilliant green just here and there. I don't want this green isolated. I want hints of it in other parts of the painting. So maybe right down in here, there's a number of leaves right down here growing that are kind of close to me. So that might be a good thing to put in while I'm back in the studio. Back down here, I have the same thing, a few brilliant patches of green. Don't want to overdo it with this green. We have a dark shadow under the eave of this house. So I'll take my three primary colors here. They're red, yellow, and blue. Mix those together. Make a dark color. It's going to be a warm color because it's reflecting everything from the ground. So this will be a warm, dark shadow right in here. I'll take my titanium white, small touch of yellow. This will be a very light portion of the painting. And I'll just indicate the front door of David's studio right here. And one of the windows. Boy, that really leads the eye over into this, doesn't it? Now, on the shed that houses the wood-fired kiln, that's very bright. It's catching some sunlight. Put a little sliver of that roof in. Then I have a downspout and a couple of small posts. And with this Indian yellow, we'll put some highlights where the sun is going across the road. This is nice because I can actually describe how that light dips down into the valley of those ruts, over the top, and then back up again. So I can do that right here. It dips down, another one dips down, and then maybe we'll put a third one here. Now up here, this will be in shadow because the sun is coming from this direction. But right here, this will be catching the light again. So I'm going to follow this light patch of yellow, sort of, I'll feel it go across this rut in the road and then up the hill. And that will describe the lay of the land. It will describe the direction of this landscape. This light patch here is going to go right across this road. So now it will look like this is following across the road and back up again. It looks like we have a maple tree up here. It has a very light trunk on it. It's right in here. And it is very neutral color, but it tends to be somewhat warm. So I'm just with the edge of this brush going to indicate a few of those branches and trunks. Now I'm not going to bring the branch all the way down. I did here, but I want to be able to see this branch, and then I want to lose the branch because it's obscured by leaves and other things. So I don't want to express a dead tree here. What I want to express is a tree that's hidden by leaves and other branches. Now this is another area that would probably be best done back in the studio, so I'm just going to put an indication of all this in here. Now I think it's time for me to put this fence in right back in here. This is a very dark area once again. I really can't see where I indicated that before, but I know where it is, so it'll just come right down in here. This is nice because this fence post will get lost within all these dark greens. And I think that'll make a nice sort of a subtle area to this painting. I don't want this fence post to jump out because I want all the interest on this painting to be right up here. So there's a lot of foliage here, and with these dark fence posts, it can sort of get lost in there. Now, these are split rail fences, so they don't have to be very even. I'll just kind of twist my paintbrush as I go along there. This area right here looks too light to me. It's coming forward too much. So I'll take this dark color with my 3 colors here. I'll spray this, and I'll just scumble some more of this dark color right down in here. I want to push this into a darker area. It's fighting with this area right here too much. So we'll just put kind of a glaze over this. This can all be in shadow. Grab a little more blue. I'll make this dark and make that dark in there. And we have some kind of vines here growing over this fence, so I'll put a few of those in here. Now, detail often makes a painting beautiful, it makes it interesting, it makes it nice, but I'm trying to get the foundation of this painting, and I'm not worried about the details quite yet. I just want to get these big areas down, and especially I want to get the values as correct as I can. I've grabbed a small brush and I'll indicate some more fence posts way back here. I don't think I'll even bother to put the cross members on that yet. I do see some of these brilliant yellow leaves on this tree. So I'll take my Indian yellow and mix it with a bit of white. If I don't mix it with white, then it's transparent yellow, so they won't really show up. So I have to mix it with white in order for these yellow leaves to show up. Now I could use cadmium yellow light or another yellow that's opaque already, but all I have out on my palette today is Indian yellow, so I'll just add some white to that, and that will make this opaque. And there's a lot of texture going on in this painting. I want a little bit of eye relief from this texture, so I think the place to do that is right here. So I'll take a larger brush. I'm going to spray this so this paint flows over this nice and easily. And since this has white in it, it's opaque and it will cover up that texture in there. Now that's a very big area to have as a solid area, so I'm going to put a few patches of shadows over this. Well, I think that's all I'm going to do out here in the field. I'm going to take some photographs, then we'll take this painting back into the studio and I'll show you how I can put some finishing touches on it. But right now, let's go back up and join Sarah and David as he's about to open the kiln.
Well, David, this is the day that we've been waiting for. 4 days worth of loading the kiln, 36 hours of hot fire, right?
Right.
And then a day or a day and a half of cooling.
A couple of days cool.
This comes open inch by inch, revealing the beautiful pottery with the glazes. I can still feel the heat. It's nice and warm still.
Oh yeah, and it'll stay, the kiln itself will stay warm for a couple of days.
This is exciting. All this work, and then here are the fruits of your labor.
Yes.
Oh, these look gorgeous.
Yeah, it looks like good firing. Good firing.
These hand-thrown pots have come to life with their own dazzling glazes and patterns. Look at this rich ginkgo leaf design on the platter I carried out when we loaded the kiln. Vases, lamp bases, bowls, pitchers, and mugs. I've enjoyed the overview of pottery making with David, who loves what he does, handcrafting objects of art, creating beauty you can use.
We're back in the studio, and Mickey's here with me, and I think I'm going to finish this painting. I've got my paints out here on my palette, and I've added a few more colors than what I had. I have titanium white, ultramarine blue, Indian yellow, alizarin crimson. I also have cerulean blue, cadmium yellow light, cadmium red light. I have a permanent green light and a chromium oxide green. I don't think Mickey's going to be much help, so I'm going to put him down and get started on this painting. I added more color down in this area with these cool blue-green colors. Up here near the Pottery studio, I added more detail in the house and right here where he had his wood-fired kiln. I brightened up this whole area right in here, a bit on the road and some on the grass. I added more detail to this fence. And up in these trees, I added lots of sky holes, lots of sky showing through. And then with a dry brush, I softened all the areas here to sort of give it a little bit of a glow. This area down in here was so dark. I did lighten this and put in more detail, but I really wanted to keep the eye and the interest away from this area. So all this here was quite soft with very little detail. Normally I would put more detail in the foreground, but in this case, if I were to have done that, it would have taken the interest away from where I wanted the eye to go. I think that's going to finish this painting. Let's put a frame on it now and take one last final look.
For more information about painting and travel with Roger and Sarah Bansemer, visit paintingandtravel.com.